Welcome back, y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep one foot in the academy and one foot in the streets. And we back, and we back, and we back.
I was trying to make my curls bounce. They weren't bouncing.
They weren't bouncing?
They
look
weren't
good
bouncing.
to me. They look fresh.
You have to go like that.
A little fresh. it ain't working.
Yo, what's good, y'all? How y'all feeling?
I'm feeling great. How are you?
Feeling good. Feeling great. How are you?
A little soldier boy in there.
Listen. Oh man, life is good. Life is good. I'm loving it. Beautiful. Oh wait, somebody at the door. Hold on real quick. Y'all talk. I will be right back. Somebody at the door.
John getting guests in the middle of the episode.
My question is why he had to turn the camera off.
That's a good question.
Who is it, John?
Bring him to the camera. Bring him to the camera.
What Ashley Banks say? Mind your business. All right, just mind your business.
You know who's at the door.
Yeah.
You see, he still conveniently has not gone back on camera.
Has the camera off.
John got secrets. John got secrets. Okay, so Jackie, while we're here just with us, tell us about this phenomenal twist out you got going. So what did you use?
Is it really phenomenal?
Yeah.
I think it's the light that's really like making it pop and stuff. I will say this, that I haven't done a clay wash in forever, and I did a clay wash for the first time in like at least a year, because my hair was crispy, and the clay wash really helps to bring like life and moisture back into my hair, at least for me. And so, yeah, I did that. I also hadn't done flaxseed in a while, like flaxseed gel in a while. So I threw some of that in there. And I feel like flaxseed gel makes my hair just like super shiny. So
I would say so.
Yeah, just a little of that.
Clay and
a couple little herbs and berries up in here.
You made yourself, or did you buy them?
The clay comes dry, so I just mix it with like water.
Some of the Amazon that like what's that clay?
Yeah. And then the flaxseed gel, like the flax seeds just come like whole, and then you just boil them.
So this is stuff you made yourself. That's what we're saying. So basically,
I just added water to both. Yeah.
Everybody added water. People add to clay and flaxseeds all the time and don't do what you just did to get that sheen on your life.
Well, come on and do it, because it is not crazy hard to do either. So
all right, John, he has come back from answering the
mystery guest.
Yeah. Door.
We back. Yeah, life is good. I can't complain. Good stuff. Don't know no major updates. I could say on.
You have a birthday coming up.
Ooh.
Yes, I do have a birthday coming up, and I'm excited. I am. This actually goes into the topic. So did y'all already give a quick?
No, we're starting now. This is it.
Oh, this is it. Okay. Oh goodness. See when you shooting podcasts at home with a child or kids. Okay. Go back in the room. Thank you. I'm glad you're done. All right. So yes, I have a birthday coming up, and I'm not ashamed to say, right? It's pushing P, but I'm pushing 40. Okay. So let me listen. It's happening, right?
So are you turning 40 or are you turning 39?
So I'm turning 38. So
okay, so you
yeah. I'm turning 38. I'm 37 right now. I'm turning 38. So it's kind of, you know what I'm saying? I'm creeping up on there, but I'm pushing 40. And I'm like, having the conversations that everybody's having, like, okay, like I don't know, when you get to certain key ages, I don't know if you've all ever done this, but I don't know if you've gotten to certain key ages and you just like look back over your life. I look back over my life and I think things over. Yeah. But I don't know, you just kind of look back over your life and you you ask yourself that question, right? The question that everybody asks themselves: what did I accomplish? Did I do what I wanted to do? Did I go to school? Did I, do I have this much in the bank? Did I purchase this? Did I get married? Do I have kids? Do I have like all of these different things that society says you need to do before a certain age, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can go into what I thought when we get into the actual topic. We haven't done the Off the Georgia Dome yet, right? Mm-mm. Okay, so we'll do the Off the Georgia Dome, and then I'll tell you what I thought when we go into it. But I started thinking about that, right? And then I was talking to just a couple of friends, and a lot of my close friends within my village are turning 40. Some sooner than me, some maybe a year or two after me. And they've been having these conversations like, what did I do? Did I hit those milestones? Some people are excited about turning 40, and some people I have one or two friends that are literally depressed. Like they've actually been having health issues because they are not excited about turning 40 because they did not hit those milestones, Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, this is an important conversation. I think it can be exciting and fun, but I also think it's serious because as a sociologist, I believe that social influences and social pressures at times can have a much deeper effect on us than even physical or biological ones. You know what I'm saying? Physical influence, biological influences in terms of like the rules around it. And so I think this is an important conversation to have. And so I brought this up to the podcast team, and they was down to have this convo. So let's get into it. Let's shoot off the Georgia Dome.
Yay. And wait, before we do that, we also have to acknowledge that our other co-host here, Jackie, also recently celebrated her birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. I am born at the end of April, so I feel like I can justify celebrating all of April and all of May. So really,
whoa.
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Whoa.
What's the issue?
What you said?
We gotta what? Huh? What?
I thought somebody said something.
I thought somebody who wasn't able to celebrate in 2 months said something.
That's beautiful.
But yeah, so celebrate all of April. And a part of that is like having been in school and now like being in more school, but on the different side. My birthday often falls around like finals time. And so I was just used to being like, let's either push the birthday up and celebrate earlier, or let's push it back and celebrate later. Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to celebrate until I don't feel like celebrating anymore.
Listen.
That works.
That's your life. I love it. Celebrate your life.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then what's the question that we're going to answer off the Georgia
Dome? Life milestones. What are your thoughts on them?
I got something for that immediately, because as you were talking about your friends and how it's kind of hitting them, I'm like, milestones are nothing but like a construct. If I'm turning, 21, 30, 35, 40, 65, like whatever age, then guess what? If I'm not happy at that age, then there's 22, there's 31, 36, like 41, 66. Like there's all these other ages that I could choose to make it about me if I so decide. If I'm like, I'm not happy right now, then I'm gonna be happy at 35 and a half. I'm gonna be happy at 40 and 3/4. I'm gonna be happy at 66.9, So yeah.
That's I love that you started with that, just saying F your milestone. That I feel like in short.
Yeah.
What I will say is I totally have felt the pressure of being somewhere by a certain time.
Yeah.
And I think the older I get, I am like, the less I care about what I think the prescription was, what I was supposed to be doing by this time, because there was a lot of stuff I should have been doing and could have been doing. And I think just the older I get, the more I'm like, yo, the whole script is a lie. The whole script is a lie. And everybody has such a different story. Everybody has such a different journey. And the sooner you start realizing that, the more you get to love life in a different way. And it's just like, you know, how people say youth is wasted on the young. And so it's like, as a young person, it's like, if you could only know, if you could get it that the script doesn't matter, it's just like, but it's like, you don't get it. It doesn't seem like you get it until later because you think it's supposed to go this way. And so I think the older I get, the more I release myself from the script. And that doesn't mean that there aren't still scripts that aren't out there that are kind of in the back of my mind, including having children. We had a whole episode about like whether or not we're gonna have children. And so there's the one part of me that's like, if it'll happen, if it's gonna happen, then there's another part that's like, your biological clock is ticking, girl. You need to go ahead and get some beans in that oven. And so it's like, is that gonna happen when I get to that point? So it's just like, have I checked this off yet? And people, so you know, I'm looking forward to just living my life and being happy outside of the social scripts.
Yeah.
That's my off the Georgia.
That's good.
What about you, John?
Off the Georgia Dome. Social scripts, milestones, they're not as important as I thought they were. And that is part of mine. Which actually leads me into my first question for all of you. Did you all follow the society's rules around milestones? Forget that. We'll come back to that. My first question is, what was it? It was just in my head. My first question is, do you all feel that you reach your milestones? / society's milestones for your life?
That's a hard question for me to answer because I don't feel like I ever had my life fully planned out in terms of like saying, I want to do this and do that. You know, I even think about when it came to my wedding, how folks are like, oh yeah, you know, women been planning their weddings since they were little girls. And I was like, I wasn't, you know, I'm here now, so obviously I'm a planet, but like I wasn't, like I didn't have that.
I'm at my wedding now, might as well plan it.
I'm a planet. But I didn't have like that sort of like, all right, well, at this age, I'm gonna get married and it's gonna look like this, and then, you know, 2 years later, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna look like that. Like I've never really had that. Like I kind of feel like in some senses, I'm along for the ride in life. But on the other hand, like when I look at the sort of things that society emphasizes, I do like check some of those boxes in terms of like going to college and getting degrees and getting married and getting a good job. Like I do check those boxes, and maybe that's why it feels easier for me to like poo-poo on those things, because I don't feel the pressure of not having them. Like I have them, so I don't have to feel like I'm missing something.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. You know, for me, even you distinguishing between societal ones and my societal milestones and my milestones, I don't know if I've ever actually explicitly done that to see like what were really like my goals outside of what I thought society expected me to do. And like you said, Jackie, like you said, you kind of just like been open to like letting life happen. And I think I feel like in some ways I have been more passive in the way that I have engaged with life in some ways, because I think I was sticking to the script a lot of times. And I think also being like, for example, even going to high school, it wasn't a question that I would stay in high school. Even that, like some people very early on are like, high school's not for me, you know, but I performed well in school. I learned the system. I learned how to beat the system and get A's. and beguile my teachers and make them, be like, I have, whatever. And then for me, the natural next step was just college. And it was just what I didn't think about, like, how now more recently there's a thing about the gap year and people do it, and that's interesting. And yet for me, I had never even questioned anything besides just like, oh, okay, I'll go to college. And then, I'll go to college. And then I did want to do a study abroad year. So I did a study abroad semester. So I reached that milestone for myself. And then from there, I really thought that I was going to graduate from college and I moved to New York for an internship, and I thought I was going to start my life in New York. And that is pretty much as far as I went, thinking like, I thought I was also going to find the love of my life at Oakwood, which is where I went to undergrad, Oakwood College in Huntsville, Alabama, because that was also a part of the script. It's like you find your mate in college and then get married and you have kids, whatever. But since I didn't find my mate, I was like, well, I guess the next stage of life, I'll find them there. And so I kind of let that script go of like finding the spouse earlier, but I still was hoping that I would find somebody. And so after college, it was like, I want to live my life. I'm going to move to New York and it's going to be amazing. New York. So it's like, I thought that was
concrete jungles where dreams are made.
Like it didn't, that plan did not work out. And I ended up moving back home. And I think that's when I started. I don't think not until this very moment I'm thinking about it. Like that's when I kind of let go of the script just a little bit, because I'm like, yo, that didn't turn out. I think that was like one of my first doses of life, where it's just like you can have a plan and the plan go completely different, because the New York thing, the internship did not fruit a job. And so it was like, okay, you went back home, and then I knew I would be there for a few years. And then it started being the idea of like, okay, get a master's. And then I ended up pursuing that. And then that I was in Boston for way longer than I expected. And then, but then between that period of graduating from college and like getting a master's, I was thinking the script would be, you find your spouse, you begin to have children at this point, because that's mid-20s. That also didn't happen. So that was another period where it's like, okay, I haven't reached that and I don't have any prospects. And even the prospects that I did have, they were piss poor. And so it was like, okay, none of these scripts are working. So then once 30 came, it was still like, I haven't done anything besides the educational milestones of graduate from college, get a master's, but then still it was like, okay, well, you get a doctorate, or are you in a great job? That was the other thing in my mind. Like I should be really like established by this point, or I should be in a long-term relationship that's going to lead to marriage. And none of that was there either by the time 30 happened. I wasn't in like some really wonderful, stable job. I didn't have a really solid prospect. And so then I let that go. Then, 5 years passed, because after 30 years passed like months, and 35 came. 35 came. By that time, I did have a good prospect. I was in a good relationship with something that was like, okay. But then that was also the period where the pandemic happened. And it's like, that totally upended any sense of normalcy, script milestones, because I'm like, again, the world will do whatever it wants to do. So whatever plan I thought I had, that made me feel even more like, oh yeah, there's no such thing as a script. You really got to go on your own. So when it comes to my personal goals, and my personal goals and societal goals, I feel like the only ones I've ever reached were like the academic ones, but not even the doctorate. Like I still haven't done the doctorate yet, and I'm on the fence about that. But along the way, I think I consistently felt behind the 8 ball. Like I think I consistently felt like a late bloomer. That was a long answer, but that's my truth.
Yeah.
The other day, I was watching The Breakfast Club, and Viola Davis was on there, and she said something, and I posted it to my Facebook. She said, "Success pales in comparison to healing." And that shit hit me like a ton of bricks, I was like, that's it. Like, that's it. I think that's how I feel about milestones. Like, I did it. Like, I did it kind of like the way I was supposed to. You know what I'm saying? There were things I accomplished that was not necessarily expected of me based on my race, class, and gender and upbringing. And you can do those things. You can defy certain odds. You know, went to college, got a master's, got a PhD. I didn't do it kind of like as early as I wanted to, like, you know, at like in your late 20s or whatever. But I did it. I got married, you know, traveled, bought a house, had a kid. Like, I did all of that. And at the very end of all those milestones, my life just did all upside down. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I started to realize those things don't really matter when it comes to your happiness. It doesn't really matter when it comes to internal healing. And what I realized is I was trying to reach milestones to escape a real conversation with myself. You know what I'm saying? I was using those milestones to run away from myself, to run away from my own real happiness. And so now going into 40, I'm starting to realize that, but I still have the privilege, right? I have a certain class privilege. I have a class privilege, social privilege, occupational privilege because of those milestones that I did reach. And so I'm grateful for that. But now going into this next, as I'm rounding out this decade, and if God sees fit that I see the next decade, like, I don't want to focus so much on those social, like, pressures, those social milestones of doing this, and, you know, and making sure you do this and making sure you know, like, now I want to focus on healing. You know what I'm saying? I want to focus on internal work. I want to, you know, I think there are always going to be those goals. I'm a very goal-oriented person. So I'm always going to have kind of like certain goals that I want to reach. And particularly in my 30s, I reached those. You know what I'm saying? Like, I finished my PhD. I got a tenure track position. You know, more than likely I'll finish my book before I'm 40 and all of that. So, like, I'm excited about all of that, and all that is cool. But if you ain't happy within, if you're not centered, if you're not focused, and more important than anything, and I usually don't get like super spiritual or religious, but I'm a very like spiritual person. And when Solomon talks about everything is vanity without God, like, everything is vanity without God. Like this shit is pointless without God. Like, it is. And it's like one of my favorite Fred Hammond songs. And I come to tears almost every time I listen to it, every time I sing it to myself. And what's the hook? It go, the one that I want to know your ways. And he says, everything I've obtained and all I've done, I'll give it all away just to know you, Lord. And I'm just like, that becomes so much more real as I get older. Like, understanding God, having a real relationship with God outside of religion, outside of church, outside of what you've been taught, unless that is a part of who you are and your identity, then okay, that's cool. But beginning to like understand all of that for yourself and going on that journey, for me, it's led to healing, and it's led to superseding all of what society says you have to do, because society's jacked up. You know what I'm saying? Society's messed up. It doesn't know. And we're talking about American society. We already know how U.S. society was created. So why am I using what they say, this Eurocentric model, this, you know, non-theistic, ungodly, non-Black model for my life? And then I wonder why, as a Black man, as a Black spirit-centered man, that is a reflection of the divine, of the creator, why I'm not happy. Why am I using their standard? It doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? And so learning to let go of that and learning to do it my way, God's way, the African way, I become much more comfortable, and I'm not as quick to try to like hold on to, I got to do this for I'm 35. I got to do this for I'm 40. And sometimes we do, I don't want to say we, sometimes I do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? Just because, we're pressured, but I quickly have learned to kind of like let a lot of that go as I'm getting older. And maybe that's easy to say if you have reached those milestones. It's easy to kind of like, like more money, more problems. It's easy to say that when you got money. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there is a certain privilege there, and I don't know, but that's just my experience. And while I feel like I've reached a majority of those milestones, I realize it didn't necessarily add to it didn't make me all the way happy. And I feel much better now focusing on something different, focusing on healing and honesty and truth and justice and love and all of that, and allowing that to take priority over, these social pressures that we fall under.
That was a whole testimony. I feel like we need an altar call. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with the part about like not adhering to the milestones because of like the Eurocentric standards and all of that, living in this country and all of that. And it made me think about how even the milestones that we are supposed to achieve have become so unattainable. The milestone of like, okay, go get education, go get a college degree. The college I teach at costs $75,000 a year. And it's not even the most expensive college.
You better talk about it.
So what are you telling people who don't have $75,000 a year to just give,
Yeah.
You tell people, all right, well, go buy a house. Like that's the American dream, a house and a white picket fence.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have thousands upon thousands of dollars sitting in the bank for, that startup to actually get the house, or you don't have what the bank says that you need to qualify for a mortgage, if you're not able to write a $500,000 check, given what these houses cost these days, so I just think about so many of the things that we're supposed to achieve and how just ridiculously unattainable some of them are.
Yeah. And I mean, even in Atlanta, speaking about just housing, and that one of the parts of the script is buy a house. Mm-hmm. And Atlanta just was labeled as unaffordable for middle-class people. So unless you're already middle class, but now you can't even be middle class, you have to be even above that to afford a home in Atlanta proper. And I'm just like, what am I going to be doing with that? So there's a part of that too.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom several months ago, and this is when the housing market just started to go crazy, and I was a little down, not because it was a milestone, but it was because or maybe it was a milestone. Like I felt like I finally had a job that I knew I was going to be like set in terms of like not moving around for a little bit. So I was like, I feel like I'm finally in a position to get a house. And then the housing market went crazy. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get one. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, well, you need to stop eating at Applebee's. Like, I don't know where this like older generation got, like we out here at Applebee's and that's why we can't afford a mortgage. But I was like, okay. But
that 2 for $22 is not gonna stop you.
Correct. Exactly.
You will be fine.
But I remember when my parents got their house, and my mom was telling me recently, my dad served in the military, so he was able to get a VA loan, which meant that they paid nothing up front, like no down payments, no closing costs, like any of that stuff. They just signed on the dotted line and then started paying a mortgage, which if you were paying rent before, like the transition for them probably just felt easy because they didn't have to save up all this additional money. But their house that they bought, like brand new from the builder, picked out colors in terms of what color you want your carpet to be and cabinets and all that kind of stuff, cost about $120,000. And just because I have friends of like house buying agents, like we're always like on Zillow and are like, oh, look at this house, look at that house, just not necessarily going to buy it, but just looking, right? And the new houses that I'm seeing, like even in my like nobody lives here city, they cost anywhere from like $500,000 to like $750,000, like a brand new house. And I'm like, man, this is like really similar to what my parents bought, brand new, but it was affordable for them. I don't have $500,000. I don't have, $750,000. So, I think about that in terms of attainability as well, and how it has changed over the years.
The world is different. That's one thing too. And I do wonder, like, when these scripts first was kind of put out there. And I think about, John, you saying that your friends who are reaching these milestones, they're legitimately depressed. And it takes me to how you invoked your sociology-ness when you were like, as a sociologist, which I don't think I've ever heard you say as a sociologist.
I'm learning to step into my identity a little bit.
And that's significant to me, because it's like, really the effects of this are significant, because a lot of them are like social norms. They're coming from all of these different places in ways that we don't realize, and they're being in that pressure is repeated. So it feels like a lot of pressure. And so a lot of people, it has real consequences. It's like this literally affects our mental health because of the way we're getting these same messages from media, from church, from friends, from family, from books, from movies, from wherever we are. And I just think about how then do we like kind of intervene and say, okay, let me give myself a new script. Like even for you, John, being able to watch that Viola Davis interview and seeing her say like, healing surpasses success anytime, basically, like you needed that socialization in a sense. And I just wonder, like, one question I have is just like, where do these messages come from? Like, so for you, John, where are we as a sociologist, where are we getting these messages that create all of this pressure?
Man, that's a good question. I think a lot of it comes from, I think it comes from various sources. I mean, the media definitely is one major thing, whether it's directly or indirectly. I don't think, maybe we have seen certain TV shows where people say, okay, you're supposed to do this by this age, that by that age, that by that age. But then a lot of it is subconscious. If you watch Living Single, or you watch Friends, or you watch, Martin, or, any of the Black sitcoms, all of the characters at a certain age had typically done something. And those were the people that tended to be looked at as higher, or appreciated, or looked at as being successful, whether you talk about Maxine or, Khadijah or whatever, you know what I mean? And when they got to a certain age, they was like, okay, I'm ready to find somebody. Like, it was just kind of embedded in and I think like a lot of the storytelling, they may not have said it, but it's kind of implied, like, oh, when I need to be this, okay, they were this age when they got, this and that, whatever. And so I definitely think that's how the media plays a role. For sure, parents, you know what I mean? Especially from what I hear from women, where women, have parents who say, like, I think one of y'all said earlier, like when you gonna get some beans in that oven, when you gonna, when you gonna get married, when you gonna have a kid,
And can I say real quick, honestly, that phrase, I learned that beans in the oven phrase from Living Single, because Regine's mom always asks her, when you gonna get
the beans? I forgot about that.
My mom has never said that, but I think just like you just said, it's like, I don't know how many times I've heard Regine's mom say that to her. So it's also kind of in me like, oh, that's a thing. She needs to is she supposed to be pregnant right now?
Right.
I think she is supposed, like, that whole thing. I'm sorry for cutting you
off. No. That's important, because again, and a lot of times those shows are a reflection of real life. And it was probably, everybody's like lived experiences. Yeah, my mama keep telling me I should have a baby. I should be married by now. And just, and then of course, for sure, if you're raised in the church, that's a big thing. You know what I mean? Being pushed to, whether you went to Oakwood and that was kind of a hidden gem, or kind of like part of the hidden curriculum of Oakwood, find your husband, find your wife. And even at Spelman, at a HBCU, Spelman girl, Morehouse guy, you know what I mean? Alpha man, AKA woman, or whatever. Like, it's always that age where we have these social pressures that are kind of embedded in our social, entertainment, academical, and cultural institutions that I think we get these scripts from. And so many of us may not know exactly where or when or how we started to think that we had to meet these milestones, but that's because they were hegemonic, which means they were everywhere. You know what I mean? They're all over the place. They're just a part of our everyday lives. And, and then we get to oh, go ahead.
Sorry, that's a sociologist word right there.
That is a sociology word. I just had to talk my shit.
As soon as you dropped it, I was like,
we gonna talk it.
To our audience who
come on, tell us about the hegemony.
So hegemonic just means that it's everywhere. It's all over. It is whatever cultural ideas that are put forth by the dominant group that then becomes pervasive in all parts of social life, particularly for those who they dominate over. It's almost like a web of this constructed web that you kind of can't get out of, and that's essentially what kind of like the hegemony of race, or the hegemony of gender. We have these social kind of these hegemonic forces that tell us this is how we're supposed to live our lives, and it's a part of everything that's around us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, like for example, like Future is a hegemonic force because he just is pervasive with the toxicness. It's so pervasive that John was frozen for a second.
Because what we're not gonna do is talk about the greatest rapper alive. Then you just send me that GQ article.
Listen, GQ, they
said Future's the greatest rapper alive.
Wasn't it GQ that also said that country singer was like the hot? No, I think that was People magazine that said that country singer was like the hottest man alive. I can't remember his name. He's on The Voice. And they were like, he's the hottest man alive. And I was like, y'all sure about that?
Right. Like, I literally know 4 of my homeboys.
Exactly.
See, that's what we learn those scripts, just like you were saying. Like, media will have us believe, like, wait, who's the sexiest man alive? Who's the sexiest woman alive? So these are the features. And of course, as we're older, we can challenge those types of messages that come out. But when we're younger, we're learning that kind of stuff constantly. Like, this is a thing. This is like, here's the top 10 thing. I was like, or I think too, like you were saying, John, like we hear these 30 under 30 lists or 40 under 40. And it's just like, I think growing up, it's like, why is that important? One. Like, why is that important? Why do I have to, or like, even when it comes to, well, no, I wouldn't say like high school superlatives, but when people say like the most likely to succeed or the most attractive, and it's just like, well, why are they that? You ask yourself, okay, well, they get those labels because of certain things that they can do or whatever. And so it's just like, it's like the shaping. It's like we're all trying to get shaped into some image so that we can be some superlative. So it's just like, well, I'm most likely to succeed because I followed the script in high school, which was I made all the good grades. I'm a part of all the extracurricular activities. I'm doing this, I'm this kind of thing. So it's just like, there's a type of script that's there. Right. And so it's just like, it sets people up to say, okay, we're pushing these people in these directions so that I can make some list, you know? And I'm just like, why does it have to be 30 under 30, 40 under 40? No one does, but at that point, that's like it, because no one does 50 under 50 and 60 under 60, because no one seems to care at that point, because it's just like, it's all about you being super young and having been super accomplished. And it's just like, I feel like there is this part of American culture that is just obsessed with youth. And we've talked about this before, like how there are other cultures, again, like how you started off by saying this very European way of thinking, like, of course, this feels like almost like a hostile environment for me to grow up in and for me to mature in, because there are some missing African ideals, one being just the appreciation for age, the appreciation for elders. And so it's just like, there is not this obsession with youth. So therefore, maybe I don't have this obsession with accomplishing all of these things in my youth. Why the F would I need a 30 under 30? You know nothing. I feel like other cultures would be like, we don't expect you to have like the accomplishment. Sure, that's nice, that's sweet, baby. But the truly wise in our community are 80 plus. That's who we go to. So it's not like there's so much pressure for you to have proven something by the time you're 30. And I think we talked about this too, this idea of these rites of passage, because in some ways we don't have these defined rites of passage. We have these, instead we have this implied yet also explicit script. But it would be beautiful if instead of saying that you need to do this by this time, there's this saying we are welcoming you as the elders into different phases of life that I think are more characteristic of, in some ways, I think physiology, to just say, you know, as like children go into being an adults when, or, you know, when their bodies are changing or something like that, or something else. And I don't have enough proximity to different cultures, or neither have I studied them to understand what some of those rites of passage are. But I feel like I'm missing out in some way, because the rites of passage for us are, in our culture, they are those ceremonial milestones of you graduated from here, you had the child, you got married. It's like those become the life transitions, which, not to say that those aren't major transitions, because I can even say, being in the relationship that I'm in now, for both of us, once we finally got into it, we were like, wow, it feels like we're in another story. It feels like this is another timeline. It's just like this just began another timeline, because this change is so significant and interesting. It's like, wow, this is new. And I can totally imagine once I do have children, that will then also feel like the beginning of a new timeline. So I don't want to minimize the impact of those milestones, yet I don't think that they need to, I don't agree with how they seem to be they are what need to happen for everybody in order for you to transition, versus everybody is growing and moving regardless, and it's not defined by these specific moments, you know?
I feel like everything that you said about that shift would necessitate a more radical shift away from a capitalism, quite frankly. And I know that we're gonna have like a more in-depth conversation at a later time, but yeah,
she couldn't help it. She couldn't help
it. Listen. Let me just
Jada Pinkett just take it.
let me just sprinkle some hate on John and his philosophies right quick. So I just feel like, you know, the milestones that we appreciate here in the US are tied to some sort of capitalistic venture in terms of like, you get married, but you have this expensive wedding. You make a home, but you got to buy this house. You get educated, but you got to buy the education. Like, all of these sorts of milestones are tied to these sorts of capitalistic ventures. If we are flipping it and saying what is truly of value is aging gracefully, gaining wisdom, like, there's no sort of capitalistic benefit from that.
That's true.
So
That's so true. Because, like, I mean, if you kept going, the baby, you're supposed to have a baby shower.
Oh, Lord.
Now they just started even earlier. Even before the baby shower, you got to do a gender reveal.
Yes.
Like, you got a gender reveal, you got a baby shower. If you had a wedding, you have a wedding shower. The baby has to have a first birthday party, which I'm still amazed. I don't know what's going to happen to me when I actually have kids, but the first birthday parties are really just getting continuously, I think, even more just luxurious and decadent. But not to say, I mean, people are celebrating their children. They do what do you. I just think it's interesting that, like you said, it's tied to some type of capitalistic affair engagement event. And that is really interesting. But aging, if you just age, there's no financial reward for companies for you just to age. And that's why, in some ways, there's the other kind of subtle messaging of what the important ages are, even by the types of products that are available on the market. So you don't get 31, 32, 33, 34 on a cup. You get 50, you get 35, you get 40. You know, it's like, even if you go to Amazon right now, you're not going to get every age. You can't get every age for some of those just things. It's like, these are the milestone ages. So when you turn 30, when you turn 35, when you turn 40, it's like, and it's just like, I don't know, even biologically, and I heard this a long time ago, but our bodies renew every 7 years. So even that, when it comes to us being on the decade timeline, if we were to get into mathematics and think about the important ages, every 7 years would be the time where you might actually celebrate a renewal, because you're physiologically, all of your cells have now turned over and you are not the same person that you were 7 years ago. And so even that, it's just like, well, where did these important numbers come from? Who's making this stuff up?
As you were talking, Amber, I was thinking also, though, I wonder how significant milestones are, especially when we talk about our last episode, Who Will Survive in America, because the lifespan for Black folks ain't as long as the lifespan for white folks, which is why we often say Black people, Black men and women, gotta be adults quicker.
Yeah.
A lot of, and then especially if you in the hood and you grow up in a certain type of, you know, sometimes toxic environment or violent environment where they celebrate turning 19, 21, 23, and you were OG at 27.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I had these young guys was calling me Unc at 30. And I was like, I'm Unc already? Damn. Like, I thought I at least had another 5 to 7 years. But I mean, you know, you were OG at 25, you know, at 26. But that's because because as Black folks, historically in this country, we didn't live that long. Whether you talk about slavery, Jim Crow, the lynching era, mass incarceration, they've been trying to cut us down quick. And so maybe that's why in our culture, we be pushing, get that education, get that job, have that baby, get married, have kids, do all this by 40, because we don't know how much longer we got. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's why we get pushed, you know what I'm saying, to do things so fast, because we never knew how long we was going to be here. And we have, ever since 16, 19, our lifespan has not been as expansive and as liberated as it was when we were on the continent.
Yeah.
And I just fact checked myself. I'm not accurate in that every 7 years. That is a myth.
No.
Because your body actually replace themselves. They have different timelines. All the cells, different cells have different lifespans. So that is not true.
But is it not true that, like, starting from today and then counting 7 years from now, that all of the cells will be renewed? Like, none of the cells that I have today will still be here in 7 years. Is that true?
No. So I just read something. Red blood cells last for about 4 months. White blood cells last a few days to a little over a week. In contrast, now this is the motherfucker right here. Sorry. Fat cells live a fairly long time. Them little bitches.
That's hilarious.
10 years.
Them fat cells say, I ain't going nowhere, goddamn. I'm here on the couch, mother.
Yeah. Those are the ones that need to die.
Those are the ones that need to die
right here on this couch. I don't care where y'all go.
And it also says the bones in your body regenerate about every 10 years. So it might be, but then it says other parts of your body are just as old as you are. For example, you only get one brain. Brain cells do not regenerate as you age.
Oh, that makes sense because of like dementia and Alzheimer's and all that.
So pretty much, I think the brain cells that you got. Your tooth enamel is never replaced, and the lenses of your eyes are with you for life. So it's not true that you get. So there's certain aspects of it that are true, but other ones that are not.
Okay.
There we go. We learned something today.
Yeah.
Little science.
Speak to the point even more of milestones, like what's significant about these specific dates. But like we said, not because if we feel like we won't make it, then we're gonna mark every moment.
Yeah. That's, and I mean, and at the same time, I mean, we still, you know, I still celebrate Pinky Cole. You know what I'm saying? Slutty Vegan for everything that she did, and she did it at such a young age. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it does look good. You know what I'm saying? I can't lie. I love to see when my people win super early. You know what I mean? And to see Tyler Perry do everything he did. Well, actually, Tyler Perry might have been a little late. And in a lot of his, but
that's where I question. There's an assumption under what you have, and this is where I think again goes back to what our society is based on. So why are we proud of Pinky Cole? It's because she did it at such a young age. Then what do we think about youth? Do we think that youth are not capable of some things, and so because of that we don't expect things from them? What if we were to expect also, and this kind of semi-contradicts what I was just saying about, I'm assuming different African cultures, and I know that's a broad swath, so forgive me for just saying African like that, but to say there are other cultures where elders are more revered. And yet I wonder, what is it to say about what we think is the possibility at any age? Like, if you're young, you're capable. If you're older, you're capable of doing all kinds of different types of things. Can we just appreciate people and not, I think, have to have a higher or lower expectation of them because of an age? I mean, because in a sense, that's ageism across the board. It's like, why do I have to think, oh, that was so good for a young, because by the time you're 30, that was great, because I didn't expect that of you. I don't expect that of people who are under 30. Can I, like, if we look at like human beings are fully human right out the womb. And there's actually this, there's this work called Children Are Citizens. And it's an education research. And it's kind of just promotes the idea that children should be seen as valuable citizens soon as they are pretty much like, what would you call it? What's the word when they're in the womb? It's not germinated, that's plant.
Fetus? No, not fetus.
Yeah, as soon as they are that, you know, when the sperm and the egg meet. I forget the word. But
conception?
Yeah, as soon as they're conceived, in a sense, they could be considered as citizens. And well, that goes to the whole abortion question. I'm not talking about it in that way. I'm talking about in the sense that they can impact the decisions of people who are around them already. And so then when they come out, they already have, they're going to be impacting their ecosystem already, because once the baby is born, all kind of stuff is happening. It's already impacting the ecosystem. And then once they, you know, it's not that they're just little empty vessels when they come, they're valuable. And when you talk to kids, I mean, there was a whole show, Kids Say the Darndest Things, and then all these other things where we're fascinated by children and what they can do, because in one way we don't expect them to be able to do something. And I think that's interesting. Why don't we expect more from kids? Like, where's that coming from? Why do we devalue them in a way? Like, we devalue their intellect, we devalue their reasoning ability. Although, of course, there are there's developmental stages where it's just like kids are reasoning in different ways. It gets more complex as you get older. And yet, why don't we value it?
Yeah, that feels like a complicated question because I think about like the pressure that could be placed on kids. And I mean, this might be a little bit of an extreme, but I think about kids who are like savants in some way, you know, maybe in some sort of sport or some sort of fine art, like playing an instrument or something like that. And so you have these kids who are getting up at the crack of dawn to like practice whatever their thing is, and their parents are really pushing them to excel. And kind of putting that on them. Like, we have this expectation of you to be great, and not only to be great, like within our immediate sphere, but like a greatness that supersedes other people across the country, across the world. At the same time, like, I agree with you that if there is a kid who, you know, is excelling in an area or has produced something, that we shouldn't create this sort of exceptional culture around the kid. Like, I don't feel like that is necessarily healthy either. And part of it is like, I don't feel like that's healthy to society to create like that separation. And the context for that is that I always feel like in schools, there are like the smart Black kids. And that distinction between like the smart Black kids and the not smart Black kids creates like this false division. As in, well, because you're the smart Black kids, like you get insulated and protected from these other sorts of things. And I don't feel like that is that's clearly not true, but it also doesn't produce like a healthy social relationship between people who you're in community and like people who you're in community with. So it feels like a really complicated answer to like the question that you're raising.
And I think you just brought out a point too that I think kind of feeds into going back to what John was saying about how we're socialized to create these milestones or whatnot. And part of it is how some is exceptionalism, where some people are kind of marked off as, now that they've done this, then that makes them special or something. And so now, since they're special, then you're not. And so it creates an even bigger divide between, you know, whatever that goal is and yourself. And that you can definitely have an emotional response to that. So it's just like, well, if these are the 30 under 30s, and these are the people who it's like, really, they've reached the milestones. Once you see that you don't meet up to that standard, that creates even more just feelings of inadequacy and feelings of insecurity that you then have to grapple with, and that people grapple with, I think, in mass, because it's like, once these people are like, these are the people, these are the trailblazers, it's like, you need to, like, even when it comes to, I don't know, it's framing. It's framed in so many different ways. And I'm not calling all of them bad or anything. I'm just saying the framing is interesting in how it reinforces some of these messages, where it's just like, here's who to look out for. Look out for these, 20 people. And then it's just like, okay, so what happens, because our culture is also very much steeped in comparison. Comparison is essential to our culture. When somebody is presented out there as a standard, then you like compare yourself to that standard and say, okay, well, how am I meeting up to this or not? And then again, it's that reinforcement of that social norm, or reinforcement of whatever that milestone is, that it's like, okay, well, you didn't make that. And that whole idea of comparison is reinforced in so many places, even if you just, the concept of standardized tests, that you don't look at your score by itself, you look at your score in comparison to all these other people. So it's like, you're 97th percentile. That didn't tell me how I did on the test. Like, what does that tell me about my competency for myself? That's just telling me how I look in comparison to all these people. And so I feel, am I supposed to feel great because comparatively speaking, I've reached this and all these people haven't? Like, literally, that's their score. My score is, I've reached it, y'all haven't. Or I didn't reach it and they did. That's literally the score.
Man, Amber, you're speaking to like a frustration that I have with my students, and this is like a slight tangent, but I'll bring it back to our like conversation. But for so many of them, they want like rubrics. They want like, what are we getting on the, if I do it this way, is this going to be an A? Is it going to be an A-? Like, give me exactly what I need to do so I can do it, so I can get this grade. And that's hella frustrating for me, because I'm like, you should be focused on your own like learning and growth and development. Like, you should be setting goals for yourself. I was telling my students about how in graduate school it wouldn't be unusual for folks to approach a professor and say, I am interested in this particular topic. Can I, switch out a reading, or can I focus on this instead of that? And just kind of craft their own like learning experience to their own goals. And so it feels like, as an educator, it feels frustrating to know that students are constantly in this space where they're like, give me the plan, tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. And I feel like I see that kind of playing out in terms of like our milestones in life. Like, we're training kids from very, very young to hit these milestones in the social context that they spend the most time in, which is school, outside of like their home. But, so we're teaching kids like, you have this milestone, this academic milestone that you have to hit, and it's very prescriptive. And so once they hit 18 and they go out on their own, it makes perfect sense that you've spent all this time doing exactly that, in terms of like, you have a very prescribed thing that you have to do. Right. You get the plan and then you execute it. Right. There's no place where we teach them, you should think about what you like and what you enjoy and pursue that instead.
Right. I mean, that's the whole piece. And that's not even just African. I mean, they did this in ancient Europe as well. But the what do you call it? The apprenticeship. You know what I mean? Like, you at a very young age, you decided, maybe alongside your parents or whatever, what you wanted to do, whether you want to be a carpenter or a brick mason or a soldier or whatever. And then that determined your life, and your milestones were determined based on what your purpose was, not these general rules around, everybody go to school, everybody go to college, everybody, because everybody's different. So what you're saying, Jackie, is how it used to be. You know what I mean? We our milestones were shaped by our purpose and what we were supposed to do on this earth. And I just think that's amazing. I'm really glad you pointed that out.
That's so liberating, you saying that. Like, that, I feel like that totally is just like to whatever the things I was like, my milestones are attached to what I'm desiring to be here to do on this planet, And even though people, we could kind of question like the whole idea of purpose, and if you have a singular purpose or whatever the hell, but the point is, it's connected to who you are. It's not connected
your
to
specific identity.
It's connected to you, And so with that, as we close, I want to ask you guys a question. So what social norms or things have you like released yourself from at this age? Like, we grew up with all of these different things that they've told us to do. And what is something that at this age now, you're like, I'm freed from that. I no longer believe that, or I'm totally okay. There is another side to a social
norm. I mean, I'll talk more about this later, but for sure, I've let go of the social norms around like relationships, and like what a loving relationship is supposed to look like. You know what I mean? Whether it looks like a traditional marriage or a non-traditional marriage or a common law marriage or a life partnership or whatever. So go use the go. Go, girl. She done messed up my flow. I had a whole thing going. You know what I mean? Jacked up my whole thing, bro. But yeah, like, I've definitely let go of that. You know what I mean? That's definitely one of the milestones, or I guess one of the traditional norms that I've been rethinking in recent years.
Yeah, I guess mine is similar in the sense of like, John, I know you were talking about like relationship norms, and I think that one of the things that I'm constantly like undoing or unlearning, as Amber might say, is gender norms. And I think I had a really distinct experience early on, like in life, which was that when I was graduating from high school, I was the valedictorian in my class.
Me too. Oh my God, we were this
smart girl. I just had like this whole conversation about like the false dichotomy, but
I graduated with a 2.8, so I just want to put that out there.
But you graduated.
I was nowhere near valedictorian. Ooh, y'all so smart.
No, okay, sorry. Back to you, Jackie.
It's all good. So I remember like being really excited that I had made this like accomplishment. And I remember speaking to one of my aunts who obviously is older. And so I was telling her like I'm the valedictorian of my high school, like I'm about to go to college. And at the time, like we didn't have that many folks in my family that had gone to college. I might have been like the first person to go straight to college after high school. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I was really excited about it. And she was like, yeah, that's all good and everything, but have you gotten like more domesticated? And what she meant by that was like, do you cook? Do you clean? Do you keep house? Like, do you do like any of these things? And I was like, I get like, it had not been something that had consciously crossed my mind. Like, I need to like do these sorts of things as a woman. And so like, that is one of the things that I'm like constantly trying to undo and unlearn, like these expectations around gendered norms, particularly as a married woman now, because that's like when these sorts of traditional things come up. Like people are like, well, do you cook every night? And, you know, do you have like a hot plate ready for when your husband gets home? And, you know, is your house like spotless? And can you like all of these sorts of things that I'm like, yeah, like as a person, like I value like tidiness and order and all that kind of stuff, but I'm constantly unlearning the gendered aspect of that and constantly trying to like let go and consciously uncouple myself from the gendered norms that say you have to do these things at these specific times because you are a woman.
I'm right along there with you on some of those for sure. One of mine is a gendered one, and it's dating younger men. So this recently came up for me because an old friend hit me up on Instagram, and make a long story short, he revealed that he used to have a major crush on me. And what was fun about that was I was also kind of interested in him a little too, but I wouldn't allow myself to be too interested because he was younger. He was like 3 or 4 years younger. And when you're like 20 and he's 17, or when you're like 21, he's 18, like that is a no as as a woman, for the most part. I just feel like people will be like, she's a Esther child molester. Like, why she dating that younger boy? She can't. But in the reverse, it's totally fine, right? But it is true. Like as you get older, the length of age doesn't just have nearly as much significance, because an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old is different from a 30-year-old and a 26 or a 34 and a 30. But I remember at that time it felt taboo, so I was not trying to feel interested in him either, because I'm like, is this weird? And is something wrong with me because I actually kind of like him? This is strange. And so it was really great that we ended up just having a conversation where I was able to be honest too with him, to say, yeah, I was kind of feeling you too, but you know, I was trapped with that social norm. And then for him, it was the fear of talking to an older woman and getting played. And so it's like both of us had these things that were working against us. And not that we necessarily missed out on something, because, you know, time does what it does. It's just that now I want to take that as a lesson to think about, like, what other social norms might I still be practicing that could keep me from something that I would like to explore, you know? And so it just made me more cognizant of that. And the reason why I know that I no longer am trapped in that social norm is because my current boyfriend is even younger than that guy. So it's like, he is 3.5 years younger than me, and I'm okay with that. And I feel, and I'm still like continuing to be like, am I okay with this? And I'm like, I think I am. I'm totally fine with it. And so I feel free from that. And it's a lesson to me, like, one, that you can be freed from something that was drilled into you in whatever way it was. Like, you can be free from that later on in life. And then also the lesson of, let me be aware of what other types of norms or scripts I am kind of subconsciously or passively kind of just playing into, that might be preventing me from doing things that I really, really would be interested in. And so I feel like it's that consciousness, and I'm happy to have that. And I'm happy to have this conversation about it.
Yeah.
So, with that, shall we go into our takeout boxes? I mean, I feel like we have so much more we could talk about. We've been talking for a while, but like, what is your takeout box from today?
Man, yeah, I think my takeout box is my what I brought to the restaurant. Like, success pales in comparison to healing. Like, success is good, honestly. I mean, if you got things you trying to achieve, you know, go for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't, you know, if you do hit milestones, there's nothing wrong with hitting them. It's great. You know what I'm saying? If you go to college, if you find a person at a certain age, you get married, you have a child, you buy a home, like, all that's good. You know what I'm saying? Some of the ones that I did hit, I'm glad I did, you know, particularly around buying a home when I did, because I bought a home when it was a lot cheaper. And, you know, now my house is worth more. So it's a good thing. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, like for sure, like, you know, if you hit them, great. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, don't count yourself out if you did or if you didn't, because what I've learned again is you can do all of that, but if you're not good on the inside, if you're not happy, you know, if you're not happy with your life, if you're not living a life of joy and peace, one of my favorite songs right now is Fetch Your Life. I listen to that probably at least once a week. I forgot who it's by, but Fetch Your Life is like, I love that song. Live your life, man. And don't live your life by nobody else's rules but yours and God's. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you could use what you learned as kind of like a framework, but at the end of the day, man, live your life. Follow your rules. You know, live it in happiness and passion and love. Live it in a free and unapologetic way. Reach whatever it is you want to reach in your time with your feelings, and just know, one of the things I learned from my therapist, there is no lack. Like, there's no lack with God. There is no lack in life. We say that, you know, a lot of people say that they trust God, they believe God, and God is omnipotent, God is omnipresent, God is all it is. So you don't think that God can't do, you think God is bounded by age, you know what I'm saying? Or by, you know, you being like this age or that age, or you're at this health, or you're like, whatever it is you're supposed to be doing on this earth, if you walking in that, if you walking in truth and walking in love and you walking with intention, it's gonna happen. And God, and it ain't nothing that could be done about it, because there is no lack with what is available to us. You know what I'm saying? So, man, like, just live your life, live it abundantly, live it uninhibitedly, live it freely, live it in a beautiful, happy, healthy way, and don't let nobody use their standards or their metrics to push you to do anything. And if you do that, man, you'll be so much more happier, because you'll realize a lot of those people who do that, they wish they. Oh, one more thing Viola Davis said. All right, this is my for real takeout box. She said that the wish of the dying is usually that they didn't take more risks. Most people who are dying, when you ask them if they had any regrets, most of the people say, I wish I had taken more risks. So don't be afraid to take calculated risks, but don't be afraid to take risks in your life. And in order to take those risks, sometimes you got to let go of those social scripts, and you got to let go of what people say you need to do at a certain time, because half those people depressed. Half those people don't even like their life. So, and I mean, I'm just saying, I don't have no stats or whatever to back that up. I'm just talking shit. But yeah, live your life, take risks, take calculated risks, and live it in an abundant way.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I feel like mine is just a callback to what some of what both of y'all were saying, which was just about the centering of African ways of doing things. And sometimes like I don't consciously bring that to like my thoughts in terms of like, oh, hey, how would life play out differently if I embrace like these sorts of values, these sort of like Afrocentric values? And that's something that like I want to be more aware of as I like continue, like move on into life, just in terms of honoring aging, honoring elderhood, like all of that. So
that's beautiful. Same for me on that one. And I think mine is something that John was saying about just like your purpose is attached, your milestones are attached to your purpose. They're attached to you, like nobody else. Like you get to decide it because this is your life. It's your life. You get to whatever things need to happen for you, that's yours. That just feels so liberating to me, because it's just like, it's not about anybody else's story. It is about my story. The stories can be inspiring, they can be informative, they can be instructive, they can be cautionary. My story is my story.
That's right.
That's so liberating.
Honor your story. Honor your story.
Honor your story.
I have that as one of my mantras on my wall.
Honor your story?
Yeah, honor your story.
I love that.
It's on my mirror. It's on my mirror every morning.
I'm about to put that up.
For real. Ooh, how we feeling? We feel good?
Feeling good.
Yeah. That's what's up, y'all. Street Academy Podcast, where we keep one foot in the academy and one foot in the streetsies. Great conversation about milestone, aging, all of that. This was awesome, man. This was so great. Yeah. So if y'all have any thoughts on this topic or whatever, leave comments under the YouTube page. We'll do our best to respond. Definitely go to our IG at Street Academy Podcast and follow us there, where you can see clips from the shows and find out what's going on and engage with us and like converse with us there. And yeah, if you have any ideas or anything that you would like for us to talk about, feel free to DM us, leave a comment or whatever, and we'll definitely take it into consideration for our future episodes. All right. Peace.
Peace. Take time out.
You ain't did that.
Okay.
That got their feet upon the neck of the haters, the game and the devil like.